Hi, Pete Sacco again. So when last we talked, we were talking about the sphere of self and how the sphere of self represents our sphere of our body and our mind. And just in review, the idea is to improve that sphere of body-mind connection in order to make better observations, collapsing the quantum probabilities, infinite quantum probabilities of us, ourself, into an objective reality. And so at the center of that sphere of self is consciousness itself. And it's not just our being, but it is the center of all collective consciousness. And we talked about that meditation brings us through the many layers of achieving balance of the body and the mind till ultimately we can achieve presence, which is the epicenter of the transition between the mind-body self and the collective consciousness. I just want to elaborate today a little bit longer on some of the history behind and where the modern science of meditation is. And so it is very well researched today, the benefits of meditation on the mind-body. We know, for instance, that parts of the brain grow thicker with meditation, and that we change patterns of electricity within the brain, the electrical activity within the brain, as we become more accomplished meditators. We increase the baseline gamma activity, high frequency, to which where high functioning reason and intellect comes from. And so through meditation, we increase not just that brain matter, but which was never thought possible before, but today we've shown that through meditation and through mental activity, we can actually change parts of our brain. Neuroplasticity is what we talked about, but we can grow the grow matter, and we can make it thicker, more resilient, and we improve the electrical activity in the brain, and we increase the gamma functions of the brain. And also, we shrink our amygdala, which is the center of the brain, I believe, for fear, but we shrink the amygdala as well. Historically speaking, the Buddhists, especially the Zen Buddhists, had a path to enlightenment. The Zen Buddhists traditionally called it the state of nirvana or enlightenment. Zen Buddhism is an orthodox branch of Buddhism that emphasized striving for enlightenment. They did this through ritual and dogma, and the Zen Buddhist best represented enlightenment through what was known as the Ox pictures. The first picture was seeing the ox. Seeing the ox was seeing the higher self. It was to answer the question, who am I? What am I doing in this life? And what is my purpose? The second path of the Zen Buddhist ox pictures was finding the tracks. Finding the tracks means becoming aware that others have come before you. They've also seen the tracks. And so the path to enlightenment is well traveled. If we go back in history, many religions talked about various states of enlightenment. And so oftentimes through all the isms, Hinduism, Buddhism, Catholicism, Taoism, Sufism, they all had some trekking towards some degree of enlightenment or spiritual oneness. And so this finding the tracks is really trodden by all major religions and ancient wisdoms. Also, the lesson in finding the tracks is realization the entirety of the world around him is just a manifestation of the same energy. And so everybody is shared of the same energy. The third lesson is the glimpse of the ox. We must learn to concentrate and focus our energy within. The fourth stage of Zen Buddhism is catching the ox. First lesson is recognizing no identity with the lower self. A higher self meaning your being, collective consciousness, your lower self meaning the mind-body self in terms of the spirit, the sphere of self. Catching the ox additionally means the ability to observe all of the phenomena and sensations of self, emotions, feelings, visualizations, thoughts, without becoming distracted by them and or attached to them. The idea is to recognize that the he that is doing the observing is different from the he that is doing the thinking. And so it's another way to say, to identify with the being, what I call the center of the sphere of self, is the observer, what I call being or God or the soul. Recognizing that is a different distinctness from the he of self. The fifth is the taming of the ox. Taming of the ox is the recognition that the training of the mind is actually the most difficult part. It's the realization that thoughts, our thoughts, whether they are conscious or unrealized thoughts such as subconscious or unconscious thoughts, are just energy within us. But we must break identification and emotional ties to view them objectively. Lastly, the realization that the lower self can be trained. The sixth step of the ox pictures is riding the ox home. It's the realization that consciousness is centered in the higher self, the being, and that a state of profound tranquility can be found in the presence of that higher self. Here in the riding the ox home, the state of duality begins to leave us. The idea of the dual nature of mankind, gain and loss, right and wrong, up and down. We just exist, and there is just being. All duality begins to lose its significance. We begin to break free of the constant demand of our senses, be they physical senses, emotional thoughts, and we begin to break free of all of that, begin to identify with our higher self, our being. In the seventh stage of Zen Buddhism, it's the ox forgotten. This is where we begin to tread into the truth, or our Dharma, where we recognize that all is of the same energy. But we recognize at this point that this too is an illusion. The duality of higher self and lower self is no longer needed. And the higher self has helped thus far. At this point, higher self observing lower self is just energy observing energy. And there is no distinction between the energies. We realize that no observation is necessary. In the eighth phase of Zen Buddhism is both ox and self forgotten. The lesson here is that all is one, and that universal consciousness has now been touched. At this point, there's a transcendence of the ego defined as the desire to always be right and to always look good. We begin to transcend our ego, including the most difficult part, our spiritual ego, where we begin to realize the non-dual nature of ourselves and identify with consciousness, and we feel special. And so now we need to even be able to release that as well. At this point, there is no self-concept to limit him, us. We cease to have any specific qualities of self with which to identify. In the ninth phase is the return to the source, concept collectiveness, being, soul, God, whatever your term for it is. We've now attained unity with energy. We are now at the source for which all vibrations begin and become manifest on the various planes. Meaning, we are the observer making the observations of an infinite quantum possibilities and manifesting one objective reality. We've become one with it, and we are achieving peace and tranquility profoundly. The 10th and final phase is the ox enters the marketplace with helping hands. It's when we go forth and spread the word, spread the truth of this non-dual nature. His life now serves as footprints for others to follow. The learner becomes the teacher. And as Buddha says, we begin to live selflessly, no longer for our mind-body self, but in servitude and service to others, and thereby having achieved enlightenment by going through the 10 phases. In a more modern interpretation of the Zen Buddhist teachings of the ox, which again is just a translation meant at that time for people to try to begin to understand the concept, in more modern times, We are recognizing that meditation's ability is to deconstruct the mind. And so what I'm going to talk about next is going to be the multiple steps that I believe that we have to go through, or at least the steps that I followed. Of all the traditions melded together, in phase one, we learn to settle the body. Just silence the body, remain still. And as we still the body, we still the mind. Remember, there's that mind-body connection. And so as we learn to still the body, we learn to relax and release all energies of our body to settle. In the second phase, we teach ourselves focused attention, concentration, the ability to focus on a singular object, which is necessary for the third phase, which is that of open awareness, the ability to recognize and see all of the phenomena that we identify with our sensations, that is out of our control, but we learn not to become attached or to ruminate on any of those rather than see them pass by us. We become observers. We practice concentration first, and then we practice observing. In the fourth phase, we practice both, and this is in the Zen tradition, not one, not two. So here is where presence begins. It's the introduction to presence, the ability to witness the phenomena, the chaos of life, if you will, but always find the peace in the center and concentrate on that center of presence. It is at this point we're overlapping with recognition of the non-duality. We're recognizing oneness within the presence, that we are not a mind-body self, we are a conscious self, and that conscious is the collective consciousness of all, and we are connecting with our higher self. It's the phase equivalent in there of realizing that it's no longer the higher self observing the lower self, that at the point of presence, it is all energy begetting energy, and the idea of no longer having to have a difference between the observer and the observed. At this point, once you've attained this identification with presence, you probably will have already begin to feel energy within the body. Energy can be sensed as heat or tingling or some sensation within the body. Many people described it many different ways. But you'll begin at this point not just to feel the energy in your body, but we will begin to locate the energy in our body or focus the energy in a specific part of our body for a specific purpose, using our conscious awareness. Remember, conscious awareness being different from consciousness. Conscious awareness is where we draw attention to, we bring energy to. Where the awareness goes, energy flows, is the saying that I've heard a lot of spiritual guides say. But it's true. If I want to focus all the energy at my heart, I can gather into my heart chakra, and then I can connect and infuse that energy. And it is here where intentions, and that's the next phase, is once we can gather energy, focus energy, we can now begin to harness that for some purpose, either for intentions of introducing some of the higher energies, bring more joy, more awe, more love, more gratitude, more compassion into our life by recognizing other times when we have had that feeling, that emotion. And remember, feeling is the energy within the body, the emotion is the translation of that energy into thought and understanding. And so we could bring that in by recognizing a time when there was that energy in our life, and we can infuse that energy with the energy of our body, and we can bring more of it and then spread it to the universe. Conversely, we could also focus that energy and to heal either somebody else or something within us. And there is power in numbers. I've often led healing intention meditation groups where a number of people will basically do a focused awareness on something that we're trying to heal in another human being. Joe Dispenza especially has been doing a lot of scientific research of showing the power of intention. Also, Lynn McTaggart has a whole series on intentioning, 8 steps of intentioning, and I very much follow a similar one in my groups when we do this healing intention group. But here we're harnessing that energy and using that energy for a purpose. The next phase, how many is that now? So we had, just as a quick review, everything that we've done at this point has been all of the mind-body, improving the vessel from the outside in. So we focus the body, number one. We focus the mind, number two. Open awareness, number three. Non-duality, introduction to presence, number four. Feeling energy, number five. And then intentioning and healing, number six. Now I call it the unmeditation. This is the point at which cessation begins. No longer identifying with ourself at all, but only identifying with our higher self, our over self. That singular universal energy, that singular being, the center of self, and losing the mind-body self as identification with it. And then finally, being able to observe consciousness itself. And it was in this state, achieving for the first time, that you realize that you are glimpsing an enlightened moment. You don't become instantly enlightened and you have flowing white robes and hair and that's the perpetual state that you stay in. You've just attained an enlightened moment. And it is truly blissful and it is truly peaceful. And you are observing consciousness itself. And so that's the stages, and we're going to talk about each one of them separately in a little bit more depth.